everyone, what's up? My name is Joss and welcome back to my channel squibblesreads. So today I'm giving you very Marissa Cooper vibes with the off-the-shoulder blue sweater and the short necklace and the blue eyeshadow. But anyways, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I am gonna bring you a library book haul today. As you guys know, I simply adore my library. If I didn't have my library, I wouldn't be able to listen to as many audiobooks as I do, read as many graphic novels as I do, and I think the library is just a great space. I saw a tweet once that said that when you go, it's just a place where you can be without feeling pressure to spend any money. And I know personally at my branches there are literacy programs for ESL adults and children, and there are like movie nights and learning how to use computers and all that good stuff. So as you guys know, I'm a huge proponent of my library. But anyways, I've gotten quite a large stack of books here and I will show you guys what I have checked out. So the first book is Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. This is a story about Nikki. She lives in West London and she's the daughter of Sikh Indian immigrants. Her father has just passed away, so her family is struggling a bit financially, so Nikki takes a job on the spur of the moment as a creative writing teacher, but as it turns out there has been some type of miscommunication and these women show up, all from the Punjabi community, and they are all Sikh widows and they are looking to learn more like basic English grammar syntax instead of learning creative writing. One day one of the widows finds a sexy erotica book in English and she shares it with the class, and from there the women start to explore their sexual and romantic feelings and thoughts, and they do so under the tutelage of Nikki, who shows them how to express themselves creatively through their writing. However, they do have to keep their work secret from this group of conservative young men called the Brotherhood, and they think they are all high and mighty, like the moral police of the community, and of course trying to minimize women's sexuality and their voices and their agency. However, in the story, some gossip provides insight into the death of a young wife into the community, and some of the class-written erotica gets outside the class and starts this huge scandal. Up next, I have The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimmeline, who is an Indigenous Canadian Métis author. This is set in a futuristic world where people have lost the ability to dream, and thus this leads them to madness, and the only people that can still dream are Indigenous people. But the cure to this lies in people's marrow that they find in bones, and so people are trying to get other people's marrow, but in the process, the people whose marrow they take end up dying. The story centers around a 15-year-old Métis boy named Frenchie and his group of friends. They are attempting to reunite with their loved ones and run away from the recruiters who are trying to take them to a marrow factory to extract their marrow. Next, I have a graphic novel called The 100 Nights of Hero by Isabel Greenberg. This is a graphic novel that I first heard about when I went book shopping with Emily and Russell, and it's inspired by the Arabian Nights and tells folk tales and myths about the secret legacy of female storytellers who live in this medieval world. So we have a woman named Cherry, and she is married to this awful dude named Jerome, and Jerome has a friend named Manfred. Jerome, being the asshole that he is, makes a wager with Manfred that if Manfred can seduce Cherry in 100 nights, he would get reign over his castle and he would get to obtain Sherry. However, Cherry is in love with her maid. Her name is Hero, and Hero is a member of the League of Secret Storytellers who will distract Manfred every single night for 100 nights with a different tantalizing story in order to kind of will him away from this wager. And up next, I have What We Lose by Zinzi Clemens. This is a book that I have been waiting to read for a long time. We have our narrator and protagonist, Tandy. She was raised in Pennsylvania and her mom grew up in Johannesburg in South Africa. Unfortunately, her mom passes away from cancer, and Tandy is struggling with different parts of her identity. She is struggling between black and white and American and not American. Tandy in the story finds herself reeling and floating and trying to work through her grief and the different aspects of her identity through her mother's death. And this looks at her inner life and her thoughts as she is trying to move forward. Up next is another book that I've been meaning to read for a long time. This is What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky, and it is a short story collection by Leslie Neka Arima. I first heard about this book because LeVar Burton on his podcast LeVar Burton Reads, if you did not know, he's from Reading Rainbow, which is a TV show that I grew up with and I adore. But anyways, LeVar Burton on his podcast reads one of the short stories from the collection, the title story, and it is just so super nostalgic listening to him read like really anything. But this collection involves Nigerian culture and stories that focus on the agency of young women in different roles, and every single person that I know that has read this or even read one story from it has loved it, and I mean so did LeVar Burton. Up next is another graphic novel called Shoplifter by Michael Cho. We have our protagonist, Corinna Park. She is a Korean-Canadian woman. She's in college studying English Lit and she wants to write and publish a novel, but for the past 5 years she has been stuck at this dead-end job copying other people's work at an advertising agency. She's just really kind of fed up with where her life is. She feels stuck. She feels like she's just running in circles and that her life, her personal life and her career aren't really moving anywhere, but as a coping mechanism, she takes up shoplifting. And I am definitely interested to see where that leads her in this story. As I'm opening the book, it looks like the pictures are all drawn in pink and black and white. I'm interested also to see how those colors play in this book. Next, I have a Tor.com novella. This is called The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tate Thompson. Our protagonist, as you could probably guess, is named Molly Southbourne. She watches herself die, and when she bleeds, another Molly is born and is intent on her death. Molly knows her weaknesses, but she also knows that as long as she stays alive, she will be hunted or searched for in some way. So really, she is in a lose-lose situation. And the new Molly will always find her, so the point of the story is if there is some way that she can find out to stop all of this, or whether the current Molly will die in the hands of another one. Then we have another graphic novel called Forget Sorrow by Belle Yang. This is a graphic novel that explores the author's family history after Belle was forced to take refuge in her parents' home after escaping from an abusive ex-boyfriend, and he unfortunately started stalking her. When she's with her family, her father starts telling her these stories of old and ancient China. They range from Manchuria in World War II up into living through poverty and also into the communist revolution. And this was all history that she wasn't really interested when she was a small child, but as she works through this awful experience with her abusive boyfriend, these stories turn into a source of comfort and inspiration, and she starts to get more in touch and connect more with her more traditional Chinese parents, being a Chinese American woman. The next book isn't exactly a library book. I do have it checked out from the library, but when I went to my thrift store on Friday where I trade in my books, I found a new copy of it and I had store credit, so I got it for free. That's totally all information that you did not need to know. But anyways, this is the first book in a series, and it is called Heroine Complex by Sarah Keene. We have our protagonist, Evie Tanaka, and she is the personal assistant to this really famous superheroine called Avita Jupiter, and she is her childhood best friend and also the most well-known superheroine in San Francisco. Evie is great at her job, but one thing that she does struggle with is confrontation. She's also trying to raise her teenage sister B, which she's also struggling with. But one night, Evie is forced to pose as her boss, and she figures out that she also has powers, so she starts going on adventures where she meets murderous cupcakes, nosy gossip bloggers, and supernatural karaoke battles, while also trying to, again, raise her teenage sister and be the best personal assistant that she can be to Avita. A huge threat somehow emerges, and Evie has to decide between, like, revealing herself and truly stepping up to the plate and becoming a superheroine versus seeing her city being overrun by demons. And judging by that synopsis, this is probably the Asian American superwoman story that I have been waiting for all my life. And up next, we have another graphic novel. This is Monstrous Volume 1 Awakening, which is written by Marjorie Liu and illustrated by Sana Takeda. This is set in an alternate matriarchal 1900s Asia in sort of a steampunk style. And it's about a teenage girl who is trying to survive some kind of war-related trauma and realizes that she has a psychic link with a super powerful monster that will apparently make them the target of human and otherworldly powers. And the next book that I have here is Let's Talk About Love by Claire Can. Our protagonist Alice is really looking forward to the summer, but she has just gotten broken up with by her ex-girlfriend, who broke up with her when Alice told her that she is asexual. So now she is totally over dating, just wanting to volunteer at the library. But Alice meets a new boy, his name is Takumi, and they become friends, and she's kind of waffling over whether she wants to stay friends or whether she wants to pursue something romantic. In terms of representation, Alice is black, and she also identifies as biromantic and asexual, and I am also all about this beautiful representation on our front cover. The next book that I have is Good Girls Marry Doctors, South Asian American Daughters on Obedience and Rebellion, which is an anthology edited by Piali Bhattacharya, and all of the women that write in this book are South Asian American women, and they talk about the feeling of being pressured by their parents to go into a profession that their parents deem successful, and also marry someone in a profession that their parents deem successful, for example, a doctor, and at the same time maintaining the family's cultural heritage and their traditions and their values. That is a huge mouthful and a lot of pressure. They also talk about loving their parents and feeling gratitude for their parents' sacrifices and their hard work and their migration, and how this can perpetuate pressure and cause kind of rifts in finding their own identity. In this anthology, there are a variety of parent and daughter relationships. For example, some of them are more lenient and some of them are more rigid and strict in what they expect from them. And again, like I mentioned, all the authors are South Asian women, including authors like S.J. Sindhu, Naomi Munawira, who wrote one of my favorite books of 2017, and also Sona Cherapotra. I got two more books for you, and this one is called Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This is about a man whose name is Arthur. Arthur is 49 years old, so almost 50, and that is a thought that is taking over a lot of his mind. He is pretty unsatisfied with where where he has ended up. When he was younger, like in his 20s, a lot of his identity revolved around his relationship with his ex-boyfriend, whose name is Robert, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, but then they broke up and he lost a little bit of himself in the process. Again, we are now far into the future. He is 49 years old. He's been invited to the wedding of his ex-boyfriend. His publisher is not super into his latest novel, and he's still really trying to find his footing in life. So he takes on all of these different adventures that with regards to writing and reading, different opportunities around the globe. And in the story, we travel to different countries like Morocco, Mexico, France, and Italy, and we are just following him through his travels. And finally, we have a book that Emily has been wanting me to read for so long. I started this book when I checked it out for the first time, and then I had to return it because I wasn't done, and then there was just this massive wait list, but I finally got it back, and this book is My Favorite Thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. It is another graphic novel, which is so beautifully drawn. Like, I just opened this up to a random page. But this is about our protagonist, 10-year-old Karen Reyes. It's set in late 1960s in Chicago, and she loves horror movies and pulp monster movies. Again, like you can see, this is a novel drawn in full color, and it's extremely vivid. She draws movie posters and monsters and like movie posters that she makes up in her head. But anyways, her upstairs neighbor Anka was a Holocaust survivor, but she was one day murdered, and Karen takes it upon herself to become this 10-year-old amateur sleuth and look into her investigation and her history. When she goes into her history, she discovers that Anka has survived the Nazi regime in Germany. Karen also uses the metaphor of monsters to draw people in her life who have different meanings as monsters. This book is super stunning. I'm just gonna open to like another random page. Like, look at this. It's just stunning. And from what I read, I loved it, and I have no doubt that I'm going to continue to love it until the end. Okay, so that is it for this video. That is all the books that I got from the library this time. If you guys have read any of those books, or if you are interested in any of them, definitely let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!